Okay. Good evening. And thanks for coming to our third annual State of the Schools meeting, State of the Schools opportunity. My name is Jeff Schuler. I'm the superintendent from District 200, and I'm incredibly pleased to have the opportunity to give you this annual update on District 200 schools, on your community schools. One of the things that kind of led with right at the front of the presentation is something that I'm incredibly proud of. I hope that you're incredibly proud of, and that's that across the state of Illinois, there are about 850 school districts throughout Illinois. District 200 was recently ranked as the 10th best school district out of 850 in the state of Illinois. That's based on a variety of metrics that go into that evaluation of school districts, many of which we'll spend some time talking about tonight, in student achievement, how are our students doing, our curricular programs, what opportunities are available to them. It's based on student safety, it's based on parent feedback, student feedback, as we really kind of look at the holistic picture of a school district. And so, again, we're going to spend a little bit of time on a number of those things this evening, and then certainly a little bit about format for the evening. I'm going to spend probably 30-40 minutes giving you an update on what's going on within the schools. As you came in, I saw that many of you had an opportunity to stop and grab a water or a cookie, and so at the conclusion of the presentation, we will go back out to the Commons, where certainly I'll be available. Members of our administrative team and Board of Education will be available to answer questions if you have them, either about parts of the presentation or other questions or issues, comments from within the school district. So that's a little bit of the evening. I do want to start with just a couple of introductions. We've got three members of the Board of Education here this evening, and I want to introduce them to you. We are incredibly fortunate in District 200 that we've got a volunteer member-elected Board of Education that work incredibly hard on your behalf. As we create opportunities for students, as we create opportunities to better the work that we're doing in our school district. And so I want to introduce first the President of the Board of Education, Mr. Jim Roman. Secretary of the Board of Education, Mrs. Chris Crabtree. And member of the Board of Education, Jen Erickson. We've got a number of members of our administrative team here this evening, some of our building administrators, as well as some of our district level team. We've actually got another advisory committee meeting that's going on tonight as well, so we've got some folks that are back and forth between the meetings. I do see Erica Leacano, who's our Director of Community Relations Communications, is here. I think Dr. Rammer, who is our Assistant Superintendent for Administrative Services, will be in and out, along with Mr. Farley, who's our Director of Business Services, and then we have Mrs. Faith Dahlquist, who is our Assistant Superintendent for Educational Services. So again, we've got a really talented administrative team that I think work hard to create and bring a number of the opportunities that we want to talk to you about here tonight. So I want to start the evening, beginning of this year. We asked all of our students in District 200 as they returned to school, or we created an opportunity to have them tell us, what do you love about your community schools? And so we have two videos that I'm going to weave into the presentation this evening, because I want you to see directly from our students, in addition to a number of the things that I'm going to talk about. I want you to hear from them what it is that they love about their community schools. I want to first introduce, because I see her sitting in the back, Grace. Grace, wave if you would. Grace is a student at Weisbrook Elementary School who provided for us one of our first submissions.
Hi, my name is Grace McCumber, and there's 1,001 reasons why I love Weisbrook School. Our principal is a real character.
Hi, mateys. Welcome to Weisbrook Elementary School, where every day is tremendous to be a tiger.
Everything awesome comes in pairs.
We always laugh and have fun.
We learn good values here. Be safe, be responsible, be respectful.
We always have time to hang out. We always read the latest books. We always have science on our brains.
Our teachers are rock stars. No, really.
We are rock stars.
We are always kicking things around.
Yep, go ahead.
Learning is a family affair.
Is not. Is too. So, if you have what it takes to be a tremendous tiger, we have one question for you.
What are you waiting for?
Great job, and thank you. So, no instruction to that project for our students. All we gave was a parameter of, you got about 90 seconds to produce a video and tell us what you love. They did that with no direct help from schools, but we got some amazing opportunities, amazing submissions, and as I mentioned, we're gonna show you one more as we work through the evening. So. I want to start this evening by talking first about a couple of student learning opportunities, a couple of student learning highlights that I want to share with you. By way of reminder, in District 200, we educate just under 13,000 students. In fact, our enrollment this year, a little bit later in the presentation, I'm going to update you on an enrollment presentation or an enrollment projections that we just did. Our enrollment's actually up this year. We are up to about 12,900 students this year across our buildings. This gives you a little sense as you look both at District 200 and at a number of the comparative districts that we use anytime we benchmark the performance of the district on academic measures, on financial measures, on measures of student learning. This gives you a list of the 6 districts that we compare ourselves to. Arguably, I would tell you, I said District 200's ranked the 10th best school district. If you went down and looked at the top ranked unit districts in the state of Illinois, you would find these 6 districts on that list. And so we compare, we put our performance in good company. Down on the bottom of this chart is District 200, Wheaton Warrenville District 200. You see kind of where we are in terms of spending across our district. We are just under the state average of $12,800 per student, a little bit below that. What you see that's different compared to a number of our benchmark districts, though, is that we are a significantly more diverse school district in terms of our student population. This year, 27%, a little bit over 1 in 4 students. Our students that come from low-income households. 9% of our student population are second language students, meaning that we are not only providing for them, obviously, the academic skills that are critically important, but we're helping them to acquire English as part of our English Learner Program. We have a 5% mobility rate, and again, that just sets a little bit of context for who we are as a school district. When you look at reading performance, so there are 2 tests that all school districts in the state of Illinois, kindergarten through 8th grade, give. It's called the PARP assessment. And we benchmark our performance both in reading and in math. And so, again, as you look at District 200, the second from the bottom, right above the state average, what you see as you move across the list is that the performance of our students, both relative to the state and relative to our comparative benchmark districts, continues to be very, very positive, especially in terms of reading. I'm going to touch on in just a second, when I come back to the slide, I'm going to tell you one other story about reading that actually came from a research presentation this summer that I had an opportunity to listen to, which again, I think highlights some of what you'll see in this chart on reading performance. Math performance certainly lags a little bit behind our reading performance. As you look at the comparison of our students in math, Not certainly quite as high as where we are in reading, but again, as I tell you this story in just a minute about this research study from University of Illinois Chicago, I certainly will share with you some of the reasons why I believe that to be the case, as well as some of the things that we've been doing very intentionally to address that, certainly over the last couple of years. High school level. Last year's graduating class was the last graduating class in Illinois that all students, when they were juniors, took ACT as the required college entrance exam. Starting last year, juniors in the state of Illinois took SAT as the state-sponsored exam. So again, our class of 2017 was the last opportunity that we're going to see to have kind of senior level graduating class data on ACT. We will convert that over shortly to ACT, but we saw a slight uptick in terms of performance on ACT, as well as students that were meeting the composite benchmark of 20. As we've looked at students in college readiness, that composite score of 20 becomes important in terms of signifying readiness across all of the disciplines. A couple of our biggest areas of growth, especially when you drilled into the subtest within ACT, came both in the area of reading and in science. We saw significant increases in student performance, high school level, especially as it relates to science. One other indicator that we track on an annual basis for our community are students that are participating in college level coursework. There's a lot of research out there that talks about the benefits of students having college coursework experience while they're in high school. That can come from one of two areas. It can come from participation in what's called an advanced placement class, an AP class, or it can come from participation in what's called a dual credit opportunity within the district. Last year, 2016-17 year, we saw an uptick of a little over 1,000 students that were taking part in an advanced placement class. So that obviously is a great indicator of students challenging themselves with opportunity. But more important than that, when the students then take the advanced placement tests at the end of the year, we also saw an uptick in the percentage of our seniors graduating having successfully scored 3 or higher on an advanced placement test. So that metric in a single year went from 41.1% of our student population up to 44.5%. And again, if you look at our student population, we have a little over 1,000 students each year that graduate from District 200 schools. And so again, just in terms of opportunity and success, really, really important. We also, within the district, use a number of local assessments. Because the state assessment systems have been a little bit volatile over the last few years, incredibly important to us in terms of being able to not only benchmark the performance of our students, but to be able to effectively program for their needs, is the importance of having our own system of local assessment. As we looked at reading results from last year, even on our own assessment, we saw 5% growth in terms of performance of our students. And again, that would be consistent with the opportunities or what you saw as we highlighted the state assessment result. Here's the last story that I want to tell you. So I had an opportunity this summer to listen to a researcher from the University of Illinois Chicago. And this individual did a 15-year longitudinal study of the performance of unit districts across the kind of the whole No Child Left Behind era. So in the kind of the era of federal education policy, No Child Left Behind is the era that we just came out of as the new bill was passed. And so this individual from the University of Illinois Chicago looked at long-term performance of school districts because each of the tests, although a little different in nature, somewhat different in terms of specific scoring criteria, they're all at their core, they're standardized assessments, right? They're norm reference assessments, which allows you to compare the results of school districts as you look at individual performance results relative to the rest of the state. District 200, so you saw the chart a little bit earlier that talked about the shift in our population and our demographic. Over that 15-year span, our demographic has changed. in ways that few districts have seen, that shift in demographic. And as I talked to our buildings at the beginning of the year, I see that as a tremendous asset and gift for the school district, that we have been able to grow to see a more diverse student population. But when you look at the impact of that shift in demographic, especially as it applies to the standardized test, there is no denying in any research study that it should impact those results in a negative way. Our reading performance over that 15-year span not only stayed steady as our demographics shifted, we grew in reading outcomes over 15 years. As you looked at kind of the norming of those tests, as you looked at us in comparison to any other unit district in the state of Illinois, we shifted from being kind of the fourth highest ranked unit district at the beginning of that study up to the second highest ranking in terms of reading performance. So what's behind that story? What's behind that story is 15 years of sustained focus on reading intervention, on reading support, and on opportunities to make sure that, especially at the elementary level, those opportunities are available to our students. When you look at math, same study, without getting too far down into the weeds, we don't see that same trend line in terms of math performance. Consistent again with the state assessment results, we've seen a much more flat to slightly downward trend in terms of performance. But good news, within the last couple of years, thanks to Faith and to our elementary team and the support of the Board of Education, last year we brought into play some math intervention coaching specialists that are beginning to provide the same kind of support that we saw and we've had available in reading. This year as well, Faith's department has purchased some new intervention tools for our students. We've got a new program called Dreambox, which allows for a personalized learning experience that works in conjunction with our math program. And so, again, full disclosure message around math is not as positive as reading. But what I will certainly tell you is that we've got a finger on that pulse and are continuing to try to make sure that the resources we've allocated to math intervention and to all of those pieces, we can continue to provide that opportunity for our students. Okay? So that's it for test scores. Right? I like to lead and share with you those results right up front. But I always do that with a caveat of saying that certainly life and learning are not about a test score and a test score alone. I'm going to talk a little bit later kind of in this presentation about a new document or new study that's out there that's called Redefining Ready, which really looks at this notion of what is a high school graduate that's college, career, and life ready. And the whole premise of the study is it's much more than a test score. Right? Test scores, certainly important as kids are looking at that pivot point or that transition. But as you look at kind of the other side of the balance, right? Students that have very high test scores, but can't think creatively, can't solve problems, right? Don't have kind of a check on their social emotional wellness or haven't developed a firm set of skills that help them interact with others, both in the academic and the non-academic setting, an education that's devoid of the fine arts or that doesn't focus on wellness leaves kids, I think, with significant gaps as we're looking at opportunities. And so I want to shift now and actually tell you a couple of specific stories about a couple of the recent developments in the district that have really attempted to focus on the other side of that balance. What are some of the other opportunities that we've created to truly ignite a passion for learning in District 200? I want to be clear at the onset in saying we've got an amazing staff. I think they do an incredible job with our students each day in our school. And so when I talk to you about a couple of these new stories, these new developments, this is building on a point of strength in the district in terms of opportunities, but a couple of exciting things that I want to share. This is the point, though, where I'm going to show you one other video, because we had a couple of high school students from Wheaton-Warrenville South that also produced a video telling us what they love about their school in District 200.
My district is the best. I go to Wheaton-Warrenville South High School, home of the Tigers. It's a great community here. So many people, so many friends, great family. Our athletics are top notch. We were super successful. Here's a few of our players now.
The school spirit is strong, district north and south.
The academics in this district really helps us in the future.
Our activities are unbelievable.
And unbeatable.
And a lot of people can express themselves through music. We're one of the few districts that have show choirs.
And we're so grateful to be a part of it.
Hi, Mr. Eller.
So CUSD200 is the best district because we have the best students.
I have the best teachers.
Yeah! Yeah!
And that's why I have the best district.
When I see the video and I listen to students that talk about what it is that's important to them in an education, what makes District 200 special, certainly you saw in the video the conversation and the mention around academics, obviously very important. But I think what you also saw in the video, right, is the importance that fine arts, the importance that clubs, activities, athletics, show choir, the fine arts, the importance of the relationship between adult and student within the school district, those things absolutely took up more of the video and more of the opportunity. So let me tell you a couple of quick stories about some other ways that learning and opportunity is growing in District 200. As you came in this evening, if you didn't get a chance on the way in, on the way out, stop by the table out there from the Student Excellence Foundation. Thanks to an amazing collaboration from a number of community organizations and individuals, including the Student Excellence Foundation, including a number of individuals within the community, we were proud this school year to be able to launch the Business Incubator program across both of our high schools. In fact, just today in the Daily Herald, so if you get the Herald and you didn't read it, take a read. There's a great article on the Business Incubator program that just came out. So Business Incubator, what is it? Think Shark Tank. Now think Shark Tank for high school kids. Really an opportunity to be a part of an incubator program where you really work through the lean startup process of what does it mean to create a business, to create an opportunity, and you work through the course of the year really vetting that idea from concept all the way into potential implementation. What's special about the incubator opportunity, I'm going to give a quick thank you to Mr. Dan Korntower, who's here from the district. Dan works in our curriculum office and has really kind of led this initiative internally, working with our high schools. What's special about the incubator opportunity is not only the experience for kids, part of the goal in the class is actually teaching kids that it's okay to fail. As long as you learn from that experience, there's nothing wrong with taking a chance, working an idea through, but then most importantly, realizing what you need to do different if the idea didn't work out. There's an amazing support network in the community of coaches and mentors, so community members with expertise that are coming in and providing their real-world experience to lessons in the class around financing and legal and marketing and all of the key components. Plus, every student group in the incubator has a mentor that's assigned to stay with that group over the course of the whole year, to help guide them, help question them, kind of help to work their ideas through. And the final exam of the class really is a Shark Tank. Right? It's students coming forward and pitching their idea to a group of potential investors that give them feedback. And if an idea really is good enough may potentially fund one of those opportunities or one of the ideas. So amazing, awesome experience. Some of the individuals in the community that helped us with some of the fundraising and opportunity, they raised almost $80,000 to outfit the classrooms into incubator spaces, really to create real-world learning experiences. We spent a lot of time over the last year talking about learning environments and what do 21st century learning environments look like. They look like the business incubator, right, as an opportunity across our high schools. Coding. Right? There's a lot of research and writing out there that would suggest that coding really is the next frontier of foreign language. Right? We talk a lot about the importance of kids developing language skills. Coding is very quickly getting recognized as one of those absolutely essential language skills that students need to have. We also introduced this year for the first time a class in our high schools called Mobile Makers. We've had computer science classes, but Mobile Maker very specifically teaches kids how to program within mobile apps. Right? So the phone that you're carrying with you, the iPad that you're going to go home and check, right? Much more programming is happening now in that mobile app world, and so we were pleased this year to introduce a new Mobile Maker class. As you look across our elementary schools and our middle schools, though, you will also see an increase in opportunities for kids to engage in coding experiences. We've got clubs that are appearing within our buildings, as well as schools that are participating in Hour of Code and other opportunities, again, to open students' mind and opportunity when you think around coding. Also, I saw a statistic not too long ago that I think suggested that there will be something in the range of a 22% increase in the number of occupations that are going to rely on coding and programming experience in the next 5 years for kids. And so that is a very, very real skill that students are going to need to have. Pleased to see opportunities and growth in this area, but I think that will continue to be an opportunity for us as we look at kind of the next frontier of growth. About a year ago, we introduced the new science curriculum, and kind of at the bedrock of that science curriculum was a set of engineering practices that help kids think about science in a different way. Really, science is a verb instead of science is a noun, right? What does it mean to think as a scientist? And a big part of that is this emphasis on engineering. And so part of that science curriculum was a set of opportunities for students to engage in open-ended engineering tasks and opportunities. This year, especially as you move across our buildings, what you're going to start to see appearing across many of our schools are maker spaces, our engineering rooms or labs, so old computer labs that have suddenly been converted or shifted right into these amazing maker spaces where kids can come and they can explore and they can problem solve and they can take on, they can tackle open-ended tasks. I think the picture to the far right, if I'm not mistaken, is a new space at Madison Elementary School called the Get Fit Lab. Again, it was a project generously funded by support of the Madison, I think, PTA. Didn't I say that correct? Kind of working in conjunction with building staff. And again, at the beginning of this year, as I moved across elementary schools, many of our buildings are developing and creating spaces like this. Also new this year, through the generous support of the Student Excellence Foundation, so I led this meeting with a couple of great examples of student production. Right? Video production and students being able to create authentic projects of their work, continuing to become, again, a growing and an important skill. This year, through the support of the Student Excellence Foundation, we were able to roll out, I think just arrived at our elementary buildings, if I'm not mistaken, in the last couple of days, a new set of production equipment, production studios from each of our buildings so that all students have an opportunity to engage in video production and the associated skills with that. In the last couple of years, we've made a lot of progress around technology initiatives. District 200, very intentionally, has taken an approach that we call universal access. That's not a industry-wide term, that's just a District 200 term that really came out of an initial conversation that the school board and the curriculum department had a couple of years ago around this notion of one-to-one computing, right? Where are we? Should we think about one-to-one computing? And I think very wisely at the time, the board and the district decided that the better, the more appropriate approach to the use of technology is to, one, focus first on the learning environment. What is it that we want kids to be able to do with the tools that they have? And then what does it take to make sure that our students do in fact have universal access to the technology and the tools that they have? By last count, I think I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation that we have just under 13,000 students. I think as of this year, we have about 9,000 devices that are deployed across all of our schools. And so we're not a one-to-one environment, but what we've also recognized in various classes, so I shared the example of the mobile maker class, that relies on an Apple technology or platform. We use a lot of Google tools and Google support, right, that relies on a different platform. And so what's important to us is to make sure that kids don't necessarily have access only to one platform of technology, but again, to make sure that they have access to the tools that they need. In the last year, we've distributed more than 700 refurbished devices, so laptops that were kind of at the end of their useful life. Our technology department was able to find a creative solution that converted them basically into Chromebooks. And we deployed those across the community to students that didn't have a device at home, but needed a device so that they had an opportunity to engage in their work outside of school. We got a grant through Sprint that allowed us to secure almost 300 mobile hotspots, so if the student needed our support to have access to a device, we also want to make sure that just as they can check out a book in the library, they have an opportunity to check out the internet if they need to check out the internet to be able to again do their work. And we are almost at capacity in terms of the number of those hotspots that we're using. We also, at the same time that we rolled out this universal access device, brought all of our community partners together and talked about universal access. And I've heard in the last year many of our libraries that are now also starting to check out mobile hotspots and tools that our students need to be able to do. So universal access will always be an evolving concept for us, meaning that 9,000 devices right now seems to be an adequate amount to be able to serve the needs and the learning opportunities that we have, but that's something that gets evaluated on an annual basis as we continue to look for more opportunities to deploy technology and learning. I get asked a fair amount about this whole notion, though, of one-to-one. Lots of other school districts doing it. You know, should we be looking to that? And what I will tell you, the simple answer to that is that if in the future, in order to be able to meet that definition of universal access, it means going to one-to-one, we'll make the decision at that time. As long as the devices we have serve the learning opportunities, we believe this is a prudent approach that does what we need to do without necessarily over-investing in technology at the same time. And then finally, I want to touch on social-emotional learning. And so again, I think as you saw the examples, the student videos, and you saw the things that are important to kids, right? Again, a lot about academic, a lot about experience, but also a lot about the importance of students being able to interact in a positive way, learn skills of resiliency, learn the essential skills that they need to be successful in school. We have a heavy emphasis and are continuing to focus on what is social emotional learning? What are the requisite skills that students need to have to not only be successful in school, but successful in life? To have grit, to have perseverance, right? To have the ability to approach a problem and work with others creatively to solve it. And so one of the board goals this year, right, is looking at this whole social emotional learning realm at making sure that opportunities are available to guarantee that all students across our district have an appropriate social emotional learning set of skills that they're acquiring at the same time that they're learning within our programs. And then finally, I'm going to leave you with this slide on the student learning piece. Our Board of Education every year has an opportunity to go to our 2 high schools and sit with groups of students across the high school spectrum and hear from students directly what's important to you about your school experience. They talk about academics, they talk about programming opportunities, but inevitably what they talk about more than anything else are all of the clubs, all of the opportunities they have to engage in the school environment, in athletic programs, in service programs, in the variety. I think Mr. Biskin is out there. About how many clubs at the high school, Mr. Biskin?
We're close to 80 now.
80 student-driven clubs or opportunities for students to engage in school, engage in with each other, and again, critically important to the experience for students. Service, alive and well, right, in our community and in our schools. Just last Friday, many of you may have participated. We did a day of giving across all of our schools. The final count of money raised in one day, $22,000 that we raised across the community to be able to support those impacted by some of the recent hurricane. And again, as we approached that day of giving, what warmed my heart was to see what our schools were already doing in the spirit of service and in the spirit of reminding kids of things that are important. So again, just I think a couple of visuals to kind of remind you of the holistic importance of education. I mentioned at the very beginning of the presentation this new concept of Redefining Ready. So Redefining Ready is an initiative that's come out of a group of high schools up in kind of the northern part of Chicago, right, that have really tried to help us rethink what is this definition of college, career, and life readiness, right? If you graduate from high school not with those requisite skills, we really do a disservice, and they've thought beyond this notion of a test score to recognize that if students are really going to be college, career, and life ready, they've got to learn, they've got to participate in activities, they have to show up at school, they have to not get themselves in trouble, certainly at school. They've got to be engaged in service and a certain amount of service and opportunity for kids. They have to have opportunities to access early college through AP, through dual credit. They got to do well in their classes through showing up every day. But it's helped to remind us, I think, as we look forward, really of the holistic importance of education, and make sure that in times where we have to do perhaps some rebalancing within the budget, that there are a variety of critically important programs that we want to make sure we don't lose for our students. And so then it kind of just ends with this concept that again, if we do our job for kids, what we recognize is that college graduation, right, we think of it in many ways as a finish to the experience, right, in school. But I think more important is to really look at it as, have we given kids the skills and the requisite opportunities to actually start the next chapter in their life and in their learning. So, a little bit on academic and some of the opportunities. I'm going to shift now and talk a little bit about both finance, and then I'm going to end with talking a little bit about facilities and where we're going in terms of facilities. So financially in District 200, I mentioned at the beginning, we continue to spend, I think, in a very responsible way in terms of value of education and opportunity that we create. Our spending is right at $12,600 per student. That's about $200 below the state average. Very recently, you may have heard a lot of talk and a lot of discussion around a new state model of funding education in Illinois. And I personally, I'm very pleased that a consensus and a compromise was able to be reached to make sure that that evidence-based model was in fact put into place. But the benchmark the new evidence-based funding model, right, is this concept of what does it mean for a student in Illinois to have a funding level behind that student that's both adequate in terms of the level that it gets to, and that has a level of equity across schools in Illinois. Right? Public education will continue to be the opportunity for all students to learn and to move on to the next experience. So for each school district in the state of Illinois, that adequacy target is set based on your own individual characteristics and demographics. So it takes into account, again, your student population, students you're serving through special education programs, English learner programs, right, and other programs that require resource, and it sets what's called a base funding level. The amount of local resource you have is then compared to that base funding model, and that basically indicates what you get from the state of Illinois. District 200 based on our adequacy target, we are funded at about 90% of that adequacy target that the state has set. As a result, when you go down to the bottom, we got more money as a result of that new funding bill having passed. We got about $680,000 in new revenue this year that we have an opportunity to use to support programs and needs in District 200. Right? We continue to be a very stable district. Our bond rating still is AA stable, and we have the highest recognition rating from the state of Illinois. The state evaluates schools every year based on a number of criteria. Two of the most significant are, do you have an adequate fund balance? So the state of Illinois determines an adequate fund balance by, do you have 25% of your operating revenues on hand? District 200 is slightly above that at 29.7%. That's grown a little bit incrementally over the last couple of years based on the work that the board has done. And then most importantly, do you balance a budget every year? And do you live within your means, and does both the spending and the revenue come in within that? We continue to present both a balanced budget, and at the end of our fiscal years, show a slight surplus in terms of that budget that's allowed us to build a little bit of our fund balance. So again, the message around finance, right, is that we continue to operate right around the state average in terms of funding. We're slightly below that adequacy target that's been set, and so as new money comes available within the state, District 200, we're not in the highest tier of needs, but we will continue to incrementally see a portion of that money. Facilities. We shift now then and close with talking a little bit about where we are in terms of facilities. Facilities was obviously a very public discussion for us in the district over the last 12 months. Last year's development of the master facility plan ultimately culminated in a referendum that we put in front of the community in April. We said going into the referendum that a referendum is the ultimate activity in transparency. We developed the plan, I think, in response to what the board heard from the community, advanced that plan to the community, we voted, and so now we've got to move on and look at how do we reprioritize and how do we move on from that. One of the first things that the board did right after the referendum was they put a survey out to the community, got some valuable feedback from the community in terms of specific concerns that you had with the referendum plan, and they used that feedback to ultimately kind of reprioritize immediately 3 needs from within that facility master plan. The 3 priorities that the board has set right away and is focused on include all of the improvements that were part of the capital plan, so roof, mechanical system, all of the infrastructure needs across our 20 schools and facilities. They prioritized the improvements to secure entries, right, as a high priority, and they continue to focus their efforts on early learning and developing a solution to our early learning center. I will tell you, based on community feedback, that community understanding and support of early learning still continues to be much more mixed in terms of understanding of that need. But I will again offer it to anybody that's here, if you've not had an opportunity to come and visit Jefferson and see the work that we are trying to do with our 3 and 4-year-olds, see the work that we need to do with our 3 and 4-year-olds that would qualify to be a part of that program. It is the one facility still where the program does not match the facility itself. And so it continues to be imperative that we address the needs of that facility. And so that certainly has been the emphasis or the focus of the work that the board has done so far. I'm going to come back to that in just a second. One of the other discussion points, though, during the referendum, there was a lot of feedback and discussion around enrollment. What's happening with our enrollment? Is it going down? What's going on with our buildings in terms of capacity? I think a lot of misinformation out there about this building specifically, and where are we in terms of capacity. And so the board this summer updated its set of enrollment projections. I said financial projections, enrollment projections. We have just under 13,000 students now. 10 years from now, according to our projections, we're going to have the same exact number of students. We are in a stable enrollment pattern. I will say, though, with that caveat, that as I collected numbers a little bit earlier this week, we registered 570 new students, not counting kindergarten students, first through 12th grade. We registered just shy of 600 new students this year across our schools. And so already, while our enrollment trends show that they're stable, we're actually trending to the more aggressive side of those enrollment projections already. So while I think we project to be flat, I would actually suspect that in a couple of years, as we talk about that, we're going to be trending up again in terms of enrollment again. So both capacity and enrollment, we need the buildings that we have in terms of making sure that we can continue to provide opportunity and space for all of our students. So that becomes important then as we turn the attention back to what are we going to do to address the needs of our early learning center. And so we looked this summer with the board at about 9 different options for how it is that we could possibly address that facility. Again, we looked at existing facilities within the district in light of the enrollment and the capacity study. It was determined by the board that we don't have the ability to accommodate the Early Learning Center in any of our existing facilities. And so we needed to look either at a renovation addition to the existing Early Learning Center, or we needed to look at another opportunity across the district. And so as the board has whittled those options down, one of the options very specifically that they've been looking at more recently is the option of doing the Early Learning Center as an addition to Monroe Middle School. So you see up here the diagram to your left, and the grayed out portion is Monroe. And what we've developed and modeled for the board is an option that would show that as an addition to Monroe. That area is a part of Graff Park. So Graff Park is about 9 acres of space that sits immediately to the east of Monroe Middle School. And so what you see kind of shaded out in green is an area of land that's owned by the Park District, and we've had some discussion about the potential of a land swap with the Park District that would allow us to utilize that space to address early learning. It would allow the Park District to regain control of part of the property that's near Jefferson, to retain that as open space within the community. So again, just very recently, the board has not only kind of moved forward with at least vetting this idea, it's also looked at some funding options that would be available to it. And one funding option that they really kind of zeroed in on is this idea that's called a debt certificate. So a debt certificate similar to what you would do in any other borrowing structure, right? It allows you to go out and leverage borrowing to be able to access capital up front, but the big difference is you pay that back out of operating expenses. And so it does not levy a new tax to the community. It does not increase anybody's property tax burden within the community. What it means is that whatever that repayment is, if the repayment is $800,000, $900,000 a year, we'd have to make room for that out of our operating budget to be able to pay for that facility over time. And so the board has really kind of zeroed in on potentially a three-part funding approach that would involve some issuance of debt certificate, some use of existing fund balance above our 25% threshold, and then they've been exploring the possibility of doing some private fundraising to bring a part of the burden into, or bring a portion of the capital that would be needed. So you are getting that update in very real time because these have been very recent conversations from the board. You should have gotten an update, I believe, last Friday from the district that provided some highlights from the recent board meeting as this concept was discussed. And again, kind of highlighted where we're going in terms of vetting this opportunity. The other thing that the board has authorized us to move forward with is planning to address all 7 secure entries next summer. And so we are developing plans to address the secure entry needs at any of our buildings that had that identified as a priority. And they've also identified a little over $3 million worth of remaining work out of the capital improvement plan that would be done next summer. That takes care of the rest of the year 1 absolute highest priority needs within that plan. In total, between these 3 projects, early learning, whatever the solution is, secure entry, and our capital projects, we would be spending a little over $10 million next summer, launching these projects all out of either fund balance, our budget allocation for next year, or privately fundraised dollars that the board has moved forward. That is, again, that certainly is a step in the direction of addressing some of our needs. But the last thing that I want to leave you with and just remind you of is that capital need that we talked about during the referendum was about an $84 million challenge. So $10 million is certainly a step in the right direction in terms of addressing 2 of our 3 highest priorities in early learning and in secure entries, but it is just the start on that capital need. And so certainly one of the other priorities of the board through the next 6 to 9 months is going to be to look at a long-term solution to the capital needs that we have. We absolutely will need to do that. Again, we've taken good steps, but we've got some needs in the next couple of years that I will tell you are far beyond our ability to address simply through budget reallocation. So we're going to need to have some discussion about that. So, kind of end with cookies, right? A little bit about student learning. Incredibly proud of the work that our schools are doing. Incredibly proud of our students and our parents. I will say many a times, and I've said this as I've been out to buildings, I do not regret for a second advancing that referendum question and opportunity in front of the community. It was the culmination of a plan that we put together, and I don't regret giving that opportunity to the community. These are your schools. You need to have opportunities like that to weigh in on your schools. The only thing that I do regret out of that referendum process was the way that it played out in terms of the internal dialogue within our community. We have an incredibly positive school community. We've got great kids. We have great parents. We have an amazing support base around our schools. We don't need to do things in terms of our own interaction with each other to erode that support base. If we do that as a school community, that is the greatest detriment that we could possibly do to our community and to our schools. And so I shared with our buildings, and I will share with you, that is the only thing that I regret out of the referendum conversation and discussion, is in the fact that it created elements of divide within our community. And so we need to heal that. We need to continue to heal that as we face continued difficult decisions that we're going to have to work with. But I talked about the importance of SEL for kids. That applies to adults as well. We've got to be able to continue to work with each other in a really positive way as we solve problems and as we make sure that District 200 a year from now is still at least the 10th best school district in the state of Illinois, if not higher. That is absolutely essential for us to continue to do if we are going to be the school community that we are. So with that, thank you for listening to me as I kept sharing that last piece. Please join us in the Commons, if you would, for some cookies and conversation. Any questions you have, we'll do our best to address them. Thanks for coming out tonight.